Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Botch Pit. I'm Chris, librarian of the pit, and tonight I have something special to dig into with you. Before I truly start to detail this inventive potential addition to your collection of books, it needs to be said that we here at the Botch Pit have a soft spot for crossover, or as we typically call them, zoo games. It began for me in 1997 when I stumbled onto Vampire the Masquerade. I loved it, but soon enough found it insufficient in holding my interest, and thus began my hopping from World of Darkness setting to setting. After a while, I accidentally learned almost all the settings and began wondering why people didn't mix it up a bit more. Soon enough, I realized what the biggest issues were. When I was learning Meiji Ascension, I was still playing on AOL, a format that was, shall we say, unkind to mortals, or anything without fur or fangs. See, Hunter the Reckoning was really the first game to make it clear how their rule settings clicked with the other games, because, you were murdering them. As a mage, however, it was much more difficult. Fighting a vampire, you had to mix matter in, as they weren't exactly alive. Werewolves, better have that life sphere ramped up. Demons, stock up on Prime. However, what if the vampire you were dealing with had Dominate 5 and your mage has Mind 3? These sorts of little quirks were everywhere, with no definitive method aside from hopping around from book to book and hoping your storyteller wasn't biased, of discerning who the true victor should be. Also, on top of this, even if you do have the appropriate means of facing off against another supernatural, are there really any other non-meta reasons to do so? Vampires want to feed and attain power, and that's about it. Werewolves, policing the spirit world. Mages, attaining enlightenment, avoiding hubris, and well, there's that whole supernal realm thing. Yes, there's always a loosely defined quote-unquote reason to cross your games, but at what point does it go from being a Chronicle of Darkness, and when does it become, the Supernatural Avengers? How do you retain the theme and atmosphere of your Chronicle without losing out to that action Michael Bay explosion type of trope that is always looming over even the most experienced storyteller's head? How do you juggle all those rules of rock, paper, supernal without falling victim to the aforementioned bias? How do you cram all of those rules you need to know to have all these supernaturals in one place at one time into your head and still focus on the most important part of your game, the story? Well, the awesome people at Onyx Path Publishing have been brewing up a solution. Well, a couple of solutions, really. A book chock full of story hooks, systems, and clarifications on how the who's who and the who's not, to be honest, of the Chronicles of Darkness world can come together, either as antagonists or in protagonists in story settings that make sense. Welcome to the Contagion Chronicle. As of the moment of writing this, the Kickstarter campaign is still going strong with a couple of days left. But don't worry, if you're late to the party, you can get your happy asses over to BackerKit and track it down. I know they've already been killing stretch goals, so if you move quick, you can still get in on that, the good free stuff from getting in early. If you're from farther in the future, well, Google it, or Bing it if you're in the boonies, and get yourself a copy. This book, even the manuscript, is brimming with story hooks and ideas meant specifically to run your own crossover games. I have to mention that if you're concerned about a whole slew of new systems, maybe like a GURPS type situation, don't fret. The rules are still the core rule set from the Chronicles of Darkness books, as they are, only presenting new systems as an option to keep the flow moving faster, and trying to eliminate flipping through 3 books or so for mundane actions. Remember, your respective Chronicles of Darkness gamebooks, like Vampire or Mage, still have that basic Gnosis versus Blood Potency type of mechanic, but they've added some new funky stuff too. You see, in the Contagion Chronicle crossover games, you can join one of 2 teams, called factions, known as the Sword and the False, that actually give you access to new powers called vectors. They're pretty badass, and they're based on the variety of supernaturals in your group. Think of it in comic book terms. Captain America using his shield to reflect Cyclops' optic rays into an enemy, or perhaps in Freddy vs. Jason where Freddy used Jason to create new nightmares so he could live again. Yeah, weird examples and dating them, I know, but it makes sense, don't sue me. Total free use stuff. To start off, before Kickstarter goals kick in, the book has 12 locations with each continent represented that act as their own Contagion setting. While certain ones seem to have their focus on specific supernaturals, don't worry, you can mix and match to your Blackheart's content, and that's primarily the point. This isn't a typical core book, as it is a toolbox, ripe with settings, powers, story hooks, and antagonists that don't necessarily have to be mixed and matched. Feel free to use them in a focused single supernatural setting if you want. This is your book, regardless of who wrote it, and Onyx Path wants to make that very clear. Needless to say, each of the 12 settings has a particular mood and atmosphere, but the theme of the Contagion Chronicle overall is change. What if the blood you drink now tastes like acid? What if your touchstones no longer recognize you? What if a mundane preacher's words now carry as much power as a mage's grandest spell? These are specific examples the manuscript gives us, and this is beyond promising. Also included are new methods of character creation, catered from the start to help your templates vibe with the potentially very different atmospheric tone from your traditional games. Vectors all nicely tucked into it with your supernatural character, or not supernatural, I guess, depending, hunters, lesser templates, and whatnot. This is useful for a number of reasons, far beyond just aesthetic purposes. It makes it easier on the storyteller, but also on the players, as they can cross-reference their vectors much more quickly and keep the game faster paced, as it should be. For the record, I'm sure this goes without saying, but this book is not an end-all be-all omnibus of all Chronicles of Darkness's various denizens. You'll still need their respective books to play, which can all be found on DriveThruRPG. Sorry, if you're playing a vampire, you need vampire. Mage, you need mage. Geist, you need Geist. Beast, you need, maybe wait for a second edition. From here on, I'll give you a little breakdown of what the Sword and the False, the two main factions, are. They all have their own little subgroups within them, so that's why I'm pointing this out. The Sworn are reluctant protectors of existence, whether due to noble ambition or, far more likely, a simple desire to not have to wake up night after night in a post-apocalyptic shithole. They have no doubt about what they are. They're aware they're monsters for the most part, dwelling in the dark because, simply put, that's where they belong. Yet, for one reason or another, they serve a greater good overall. The Sworn is broken down into different groups, like I mentioned, and here's a super slim breakdown as to what they are. The Cryptocracy, Contagion as social entropy. They gain social, political, and business clout to stave off Contagion. The Jeremiad, Contagion as divine retribution. They use the Contagion to show people what happens when you lose whatever you have left of your humanity. The Rosetta Society, Contagion as a message. They see the Contagion as some manner of language that some unknown is using to communicate, and if it speaks, they can stop it. It's that whole if it bleeds, it can kill it sort of thing, but with talking. The Ship of Thesis, Contagion as evolution. They see the Contagion as some manner of catalyst, forcing the supernaturals to upgrade their mentalities and mindsets, maybe their power sets, so to speak. 0 Hour. The Contagion is an adversary. They see themselves as grunts and the Contagion as targets. The end. Very basic with those guys. From there, we go on to the other faction called the False. These are the, shall we say, less gentle of the two factions. If you played the Sabbat and Vampire the Masquerade, these are probably the guys for you. While the Sworn are careful and wage intelligent warfare, these are the guys walking around with rocket launchers looking for purse snatchers. From what I can tell, this faction doesn't give a crap about who or what gets in their way, as long as they can wipe the unnatural horror of the Contagion out of the way. Here are the different groups under the False. The Crucible Initiative, the Contagion as a plague. These are the Scorched Earth guys, found them. They research, plan, then quickly, very quickly, destroy. The Machiavelli Gambit, Contagion as opportunity. Originally a member of the Cryptocracy, these were the people who would take things too far or refuse to play nice with certain other supernaturals. Naglafar's army, Contagion as the apocalypse. Survival of the fittest. They think that the Contagion is there to battle against and make themselves stronger. Perhaps to even survive to the end of the world as we know it, simply so they can rule over the husk of what's left over. So, these are the factions and groups, as well as the basics of what they stand for. Mind you, I'm working with the backer-exclusive manuscript, so there's no way that this is the finished product. However, based on the brief taste of the book we're getting, I'm already having a blast reading up on these. The other previews I have cover the vectors, aspects of the God Machine being sick apparently, and storytelling methods. I'll be staying away from that for now until I have more definitive data on it, but from what I read and what it looks like, I can't wait for it. It's really cool. What I can tell you is that in the brief taste that we have of the book I saw the true face snagging infected people to ferry for study, accidentally creating Prometheans, mistakenly creating slashers and clones. This shit is off the wall and I love it. This is not your slow burn kind of book, at least not from what I can see. This is shit hitting the fan, last ditch effort kind of fun, and I live for that in my games. As a seasoned storyteller, I've obviously already backed this, and if you enjoy dynamic and different storytelling approaches to the Chronicles of Darkness line, you should as well. I have not been paid or given an early chunk of the manuscript in any way. I backed it like everybody else that's involved with it, so I want to make it clear we have no monetary stake in this. Just a passion for fun storytelling. You gotta remember, if you don't go and support these quirky little pet projects of these, you don't get them anymore. So if this is the sort of thing you like, you want to act on it. This is Chris, Librarian of the Botch Pit, and thanks for listening. Don't miss out on the prestige copy of the book you'll get if you back it. It's one of those things where, listen, I love DriveThruRPG, I really do. But if you get access to those first early printings, they fit, I don't know, they just fit more organically with the original print runs of the books. The print-on-demand ones are a bit bulkier, a bit heavier, and you pay more for what you get. Whereas if you get in on this at the right time now, strike while the iron's hot, you get the best item for the top dollar. For the lowest dollar, I guess. You don't really want to pay top dollar if you can avoid it. So once more, this is Chris the Librarian with the Botch Pit. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the time. Again, we always know you could have spent it somewhere else, but you spent it here, so thank you. Any questions, any input, whatever. For the love of God, people, for anybody that went and listened to the older recordings on the older mic, we've already upgraded significantly since then. Well, I upgraded. Nick was always great. So, thank you again. We appreciate it. Take care. Have a great night. Back this book. Yeah, that's it. Later.